Over the past 4 months, I've been building a lot of really large structures in my Minecraft hardcore world. And so to give myself a little bit of a break, we're going to step back and do a bit of a smaller build. And honestly, I think placing something on this hill behind me would look really cool as a backdrop for when we're on the main island. So we're gonna get started by what a lot of our episodes start out with: deforestation. And also, just so you guys know, I finally have an official NC Plus mod pack over on Modrin. So if you have any questions about what shaders I'm using or why some things in this video are visually different than my other videos, all of those answers can be found over on my mod pack page. So go give it a download and check it out. I'd really appreciate it. Now, I really hate to do this, but this is the part of the video where I do that YouTube thing and I ask you to subscribe to the channel, because if you couldn't tell by this massive amount of shulker boxes that are full of items, that may have only been a 40-second segment for you guys, but that was a 3-hour process of clearing trees for me, so consider subscribing. But anyways, we've moved over to the entertainment district because I need to grab as many grass blocks as I can get my hands on. You see, even though we tore out a bunch of trees and are making good progress, being able to see the land in its entirety has exposed some of its flaws. So we need to take this grass and fill in a bunch of holes to make an attempt at smoothing out this terrain. And there we go, that should be good for now. And what's crazy is this hill looks like it was built using Axiom, but it wasn't. This is natural terrain. It is very smooth. Next up on our to-do list is a short flight over to the mining district so we can collect some leftover tuff, diorite, cobblestone, calcite, and mossy cobblestone. And that's because this little castle that we're going to be building on top of the hill is going to be very similar to some of the other castles we've built in this world. Now, the lore that I'm trying to build here is that this is actually a vineyard that belongs to the king of our starter island. And so when he gets a break from his very long days of running the kingdom, this location is kind of like his home away from home, and it's where he goes to rest up for a while. So I figured it would make a lot of sense for this build to use the same block palette as the castle. Now, to kind of ease ourselves into this process, we're going to be starting with one of the more simple parts of this build, which is the gatehouse that is also going to act as the front entrance to the castle. And I'm going to design this by making just 2 simple towers connected together by a gate and a bridge. And that right there is actually a pretty good start. However, I am going to hop into my stone cutter here, and we're going to grab some diorite walls and some cobblestone stairs, and of course we're going to craft up some spruce fences as well. We're going to take all these different block variants here, and we're going to start by rounding out the entrance, or like the underbelly part of where the actual gate will be in the gatehouse, and we'll just take out a block in the middle, and this is where our spruce fences will go. Then we're just going to come to the tops of the builds here, and we are going to finish setting up the walls on the roofs of the castle by using these diorite walls. And there we are. After placing some torches on top to get a little bit of light to make sure no mobs spawn, I think we're good to move on. Fortunately for us, what we have to do next is probably the second easiest part of this build, which is this kind of raised back wall here. And this is basically the same design as the 2 towers on the front of the build, just perhaps a little bit longer. Now that we've got that main structure in place, we're just going to come in with some slabs to kind of try to smooth out the stairways we have to make the changes in elevation a little bit easier. And then of course we're going to do the same thing on the top of the walls here that we did on the top of the towers, by filling in all of the gaps with some more diorite walls. Now, before we continue with this next part of the build, we actually have to head over to the farming district for a little bit because we have to collect a bunch of wheat. The reason for this being, we need to combine it with the leftover mud we collected earlier. That way we could get packed mud and mud bricks. And we need this mud because we're going to combine it with a bunch of spruce variation blocks to make up the block palette for the roof. But now that we have the roof blocks, we can begin building up the next portion of this castle, which is actually going to be this longer section off to the left here, and this will eventually act as the castle stables. And then right off to the right of this, we're also going to build a little tower that is actually going to act as a stairwell, so the king and his family and the castle staff members can traverse the place more easily. Now, I'm back over in the entertainment district right now because I ran out of mud blocks, but look at how cool this fog is from, I believe, the subtle effects mod. With this mod, in certain temperature biomes, when it rains, you'll actually get fog, so I think that's so cool. Yeah, like look, even over here in this kind of warmer beach biome, we have it going on a little bit. I love mods like this, man. It just really helps to improve the atmosphere of Minecraft. But anyways, visual things aside, I actually want to come to the inside of the stables here, and I just want to tear up all the grass and replace it with packed mud and coarse dirt. Obviously, this is where all the horses and some other stable animals are going to go, so it would make sense that it's trampled down pretty good. Then we can also just curve this pathway around and extend it going out through the front of the gate. And another little bit of progress that I want to make here before we continue on the build is actually installing the details on the roof. We're going to come in and we're just going to remove a bunch of the mud slabs that we already have, and we're going to replace them with an assortment of spruce blocks. I'm also going to be working with some spruce trapdoors to give us some elevation changes in the roof, kind of make it look like it's collapsed in a few parts and just make it seem more realistic as a whole in general. But with that done, we are going to continue moving towards the right side of this build, and we're going to finish detailing that tower I was talking about that's going to act as the stairwell. And then to the right of that, we're adding another structure that is going to have this really neat open portion at the top. And this is actually where the main dining hall is going to be. And honestly, I think this dining hall room, it's not even finished yet, but I think it's already one of my most favorite places in this entire world. I mean, just look at the views of the villager trading hall and the castle and main starter island you get from sitting up here. And now I do want to add a little bit more details on this thing real quick, just because I'm so excited about it. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but we have fun here. It doesn't matter. So we're going to throw in some diorite stairs to help with arches. And then to, I guess, also help with arches, we picked up some pale oak from the entertainment district that we had left over from a couple episodes ago. And we're going to align kind of the walls here, or these pillars with these trapdoors to, again, give us a bit of a better arch shape. But since I was very clearly getting distracted, I decided it was time to lock in and grind out the rest of the castle over the next few hours. And we're starting off with yet another tower off to the right of the dining hall, which will actually be the biggest tower in this build, and the top of it will act as the main bedroom for our king when he stays here. And I'm not sure what I want to do with the bottom of it yet. Maybe it'll end up being some kind of common room, but at this point we're still a ways away from being able to work on the interior, so we'll worry about that later. Finally, the last thing we need to do to complete the main structure is just add a couple of connecting buildings to help connect the back wall to the front towers. Again, all of these different rooms will have a purpose, and I've also included this smaller circular one on the side, so hopefully we'll be able to fit something interesting in there. And honestly, you can't really tell from the time lapses because a lot of them are from a top-down perspective, but this thing is actually really big. I meant for this to be a smaller project, but I've been working on it for 2 days now, and it's starting to feel pretty daunting. Getting a little nervous about how long this is actually going to take, but we're going to keep going with it. I mean, there's no turning back now. It's here. And what I actually want to do next is take a bunch of cobblestone and start laying out some of the pathways that are going to be around the perimeter of this castle's property. I do eventually want these pathways to also converge and then run all the way along the side of this cliff face here, and eventually it will lead to a bridge that connects to the main island, but we're going to leave that for another episode. And after another quick wheat harvesting session, because we ran out of more packed mud, we are now good to kind of trace along those cobblestone paths we laid out by digging out the grass, and then of course placing in that packed mud we were just talking about and some more coarse dirt. And before we really commit to this, I'm going to test out using some mud brick slabs and some spruce slabs to see if we can get kind of a smoother feeling when we're walking up and down the hill here. And yeah, I think that will actually work pretty nicely, so we're going to do that everywhere. So I'm going to fire up another time lapse and get started on digging out the pathways and placing in all that coarse dirt. And we're hopefully going to be able to bang this process out in just an hour or two. The pathway is really long. We do have a big distance to cover, but it's only a couple blocks wide, so it shouldn't pose that much of an issue. But But alright, I feel like that is definitely a pretty big area to work with. In fact, I may have bitten off more than I can chew. But regardless, I'm very excited for this next part of the process. You see, now it's time to actually start building that vineyard I was talking about earlier in this video. And we're going to begin with a very simple process of kind of just marking out where the main vines are going to be. I'm going to do that by stacking some leaves 2 blocks on top of each other, and then once every 5 to 7 blocks, we're going to come in and set up some fences to attempt to make it look like the grapevines are growing alongside said fences. There we have the first little section done, and I think when this place is complete, this is really going to start looking a lot better, but to be honest with you, it already looks pretty cool. I also went ahead and made sure I left some bigger gaps in between some of the different grapevines. That way we can have pathways that we can actually walk around in and decorate them with different blocks. Now what we're going to do is just repeat that same process in a couple of different sections here. I'm thinking about 3 would probably be best. So by the time we're done with this, most of this little mountainside here should be covered in bushes and grapevines. But now that we've got the location for all of the grapevines mapped out, it's time to start collecting some of the blocks that are going to help us actually detail them. So I actually flew out to our taiga biome here to not only collect some more spruce wood for the future interior of the build, but to also gather up some of these spruce leaves to help us get a little bit of a different texture and a darker color into the grapevines as well. With all of the spruce leaves placed down, there are a few more detailing blocks that we're going to need access to, one of which is actually moss blocks and more bone meal. So I'm just gonna chill out here at our bone meal farm for a couple of hours to get both of those things, and then we'll go from there. With that done comes one of the more dangerous parts of this video, where we have to fly out to the ocean to collect some coral blocks. Now, the reason why I'm collecting these coral blocks is because I'm actually using a method of building I used in season 1 of Hardcore. We're going to be taking all these different colors and we're going to be placing them randomly, not only throughout the vine fields, but also throughout some more flower fields that we're going to be building around this castle as well. And the hope is that if we place some trapdoors around these things, it'll look like there are a bunch of bushels of flowers that are being collected and transported to and from the castle. You know, I figured if this was a vineyard, it would also make sense if they had a lot of different flowers growing around the place. Not only just look pretty around the place, but maybe there is some use for these flowers too. Maybe the people use the scents of the flowers to help imbue their wine, or maybe even extract some of the flavors to put in the drinks as well. I think that would be pretty cool. I have no idea how real wine crafting works in real life, so that's completely theoretical. Don't kill me if I'm wrong about the logic behind using the scents and tastes of flowers in wine. Block game, alright? Block game. Now, the other thing I did while I was over waiting for the bone meal to grow was I grabbed a bunch of roses and some sweet berries as well. And these are the 2 blocks we're going to primarily be using to make it look like there are actually red grapes growing on all these vines. But now that we have all of that sorted out, it's time to start placing in some more pathways all throughout all these different vines here. With all those pathways in place, we are now good to go along and start placing down all of the rose bushes and berry bushes. I placed down all of the pathways first because if we did the berries and roses first, there was a good chance we'd have to pick them all up and put them down a second time because we'd be replacing all of the grass that's underneath of them with the coarse dirt. But there we go. Look at how beautiful all of these rows of grapevines look in front of the castle there. Now I am starting to really get excited about the future of this project. But now what I need to do is kind of refine some of these pathways, especially the ones that are along the outside of the property. And I kind of need to just line them with some cobblestone, stone, mossy cobblestone, and other, stone variation blocks. And we're going to do this to help connect the pathways to the ground a little bit more, to make it look like there are some different rock formations that have actually raised up the land in certain spots, and the pathways have been built around those areas. And then once we have the base outline set in, we're going to just come in with a bunch of stairs and slabs to help smooth it all together. And yeah, taking a step back and looking at this from FreeCam mod, that looks a lot better. But now that that's done, we can start working on another really exciting part of this video, which is designing and setting up all the different fields that we're going to have in front of the vineyard. And we're going to begin by just once again laying out a bunch of different pathways with some cobblestone blocks to kind of get an idea of what this will visually look like when it's done. And something like this should be pretty good. But before we can actually start placing all the path blocks down, I need to go out and collect some more gravel because we ran out of coarse dirt. Fortunately for us, there's a stony shores right nearby, so this should be light work. We are also going to swing back out to our mangrove swamp because we need to collect some more mud as well. But with that, we can get back to placing down the pathways and get this entire field sorted out. With all the pathways marked out, it's now time to start lining the perimeter of the fields once again with some more cobblestone walls. And we're just going to do the same thing we did up by the grain vines by placing down a base wall and then going back through with a bunch of slabs and stairs to help detail the thing. But now we are also going to come in with another layer of detail here by adding in some oak leaves all over the place. I kind of want to make it look like that this wall hasn't really been all that well maintained, so it's kind of broken down and overgrown in a lot of different places. And finally, another thing I want to do is come in with a bunch of different fences and actually trapdoors as well. And I want to build these in particular where the pathways from the field converge with the main pathway that surrounds the property. Now, my goal here is to make it look like that the pathways that run through the field used to connect to the main road that runs around the edge of the property itself. But as the starter island grew, as more citizens and civilians moved in and traffic along this road got more dense, the king decided it would be best to close off those extra entrances to just ensure the safety of his family and to make sure nobody got on the property to ruin the crops they were growing. And there we go. This looks really good now. I'm very happy with how this is going. And it is finally time to start planting a bunch of flowers all throughout this field here. So we're gonna start by bone mealing and placing down a bunch of these lilacs to get our first flower field in place. Next up on our list is just a bunch of peonies here, and then once we're done with that, we can continue collecting the rest of the flowers and placing them down. Well, I know we were just placing flowers, but that took quite a while. But honestly, guys, this was definitely worth it. I think this place is looking absolutely gorgeous from this main road here. Just seeing that castle sit atop the hill with all of the flowers and the vineyard in front of it, it's just so cool. And from above and free cam mod, it even looks cooler. And don't even get me started about how cool it looks on the map. I mean, you know, it's actually a really big area. Like, it takes up over half the size of the starter island. I can't believe... I mean, this is a big space we filled up, and the views of our main castle from this area are also just insane. I'm really looking forward to this thing being done. But anyways, I want to start decorating all the different fields now, but before we do that, we need to put up another cobblestone wall along the main pathway heading up to the gatehouse. That way, this area off to the side here will feel a little bit more complete and just look better in general. And I'm also doing this because eventually off to the right of this wall, I want to replace that entire forest with another custom forest. I really want to make an aspen, or I guess birch forest of some kind, which we're going to get to the beginning stages of that later in this video. But yeah, that's something we're going to do a couple episodes from now, but I figured I would mention it now just to get you guys prepared. You know, that is... I don't know if it'll be a standalone video coming, but it is something I'm planning on doing. But yeah, there we go. That feels a lot better. But all right, now it's time to start placing down a bunch of those coral blocks we gathered earlier to hopefully make it look like there are a bunch of flower bushels everywhere. We're going to start on one of the main roads here. I'd kind of like to create some kind of little cart here. Yeah, something like that, actually. I think that looks pretty good. But now we're just going to come into a bunch of different places on the map here, and we're just going to dot in a bunch of different variations of, I guess, like, you know, little things like garden tools, I guess. We'll have a couple of wheelbarrows everywhere. Again, we'll have those bushels of flowers I was talking about, and we'll just try to decorate this place to the best of our ability. But there we go, guys. This area is much more alive now that we've placed all those blocks in. Not only did we add a bunch of flower decorations, but I also came in with a bunch of fences to kind of give a little bit more order to the different fields, and I'm super happy with the way this turned out. But now it's time to get started on one of the most exciting parts of this video, which is heading over into our creative testing world to design some of those aspen trees I was just talking about. We're going to be using these as the templates going forward to build all the trees on this property, and I figured now would be a good time to mention that all of these trees will be available for download for my Diamond Tier Patreon members. So if you want to help support the channel while simultaneously getting access to every single thing I've ever built in hardcore Minecraft, consider checking out the Patreon. I'd also like to take a moment to thank all of my current Patreon members and channel members. It literally would not be possible for me to continue to make videos without your support. So thank you very much for everything you do for the channel. But now that we are back in the hardcore world, it's time to just collect up all the supplies we'll need to build these trees. Fortunately, since we've been playing in this world for over a year now, we actually have all the supplies we will need for this kind of just dotted around the place in different chests. So I'm just gonna go searching through and grab everything that I want, and then we'll get to building. Now actually, the one thing that we do need is a bunch of short grass. I want to use this grass to help us detail the leaves, but even though we don't have that, getting a couple of stacks of it is super easy. I just have to run around with my shears and collect it all up. Listen, man, I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but I could not be happier with the way that these turned out. These trees have definitely transformed the entire property. I absolutely love the way that they look, and I think they add a lot to this build by helping to kind of break up the emptiness that this skyline here kind of has. It also just helps to provide some shade along the main road, and it gives a little bit more privacy to the castle goers. I really honestly cannot wait until that entire birch forest is replaced with trees like this. Now, I want to add a couple little details to the front of the build here, since we're basically done with the main field. I'm actually going to replace the ground here with some white and red carpets. I'm also going to throw down some composters and some oak trapdoors for a little picnic basket, because I want to make a little picnic blanket. We're going to use some pressure plates for some for some plates. Throw a flower pot down to make it look like a little cup, and maybe we'll put some buttons around it for, I don't know, maybe some utensils or some food, like little cupcakes or something sitting around. And then for the first time in I think 10 years, I am going to go out of my way in Minecraft to bake a cake. I think baking a cake is the most Minecrafty thing you can do in Minecraft. So I'm embarrassed to admit I am getting a lot of joy out of this right now. But let's go ahead and place that bad boy down. I love it, dude. I love it. Now, I think it would also make sense at the top of the hill here if we had a little bit of some kind of water pump. I like to think that there's some kind of spring at the top of the hill here. It would make sense because that way then the water could run down the hill and, you know, well, water and give life to all the plants and vegetation and grapevines and flowers and whatnot. I think this little design here with a little pot under the water looks pretty good. Now to add a little bit more realism, I'm just going to come in with like a very skinny pathway using coarse dirt blocks. And then we are also going to bone meal this entire hill here. We're going to get rid of any flowers and tall grass that we see. I'd like to make this hill look really fluffy, so we're actually going to cover it in short grass. Yep, there we go. This is working for me. I like it. Now, I should be starting on the interior here, but I'm actually getting a little bit distracted because I just had an idea for another detail we could kind of dot throughout the fields here. I want to come in with some campfires and some trapdoors and just build a couple of benches everywhere. That way, whoever is working in the flower fields or the vineyard have like a nice place to sit kind of on hot summer days when they're out working. And now this entire area also is not going to be completely mob proof, which is going to kind of bug me, but we can kind of sort out this issue by reducing mob spawns by just going around the place and placing down some lanterns. And we're also going to build up some light posts as well, just some very simple ones using fences, trapdoors, and slabs. So this way, at the very least, we'll get a little bit of lighting throughout the area. And another little detail I want to add is some pretty big beehives using, well, of course, beehives and some oak stairs as well. I think this is a pretty cool design, and it fits the vibe of this place well. I think it would make sense if we had a bunch of bees around the area kind of pollinating all the flowers and whatnot. But with that, all of the landscaping for this build is basically done. Now what I want to do is go back up to the main castle, and earlier in the video, I got a little distracted and I never really finished detailing all of the roofs. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did earlier and just add in a bunch of spruce variation blocks to the roofs here to make them look more visually appealing. But alright, with all of that done and out of the way, it's time to start decorating the interiors of the castle. Now I know this isn't technically an interior, but it does have to do with decorating the thing. We're going to start with putting a bunch of barrels and pots and scaffolding and some spruce slabs and some wood piles all over the place on the top of this outside wall here to hopefully kind of make it look like at one point maybe this was used as a defensive position for the castle, but since this kingdom hasn't been at war for years, they kind of just used this place as maybe a little sitting area every now and again, and maybe an area just for some extra storage. Next, we are going to move into the inside of the stables here, and we're going to start by installing a little bit of a roof to kind of separate the bottom area where the horses are from where some kind of attic space for extra storage could be, and maybe some extra hay bales for them to eat. And we'll also put up some gates as well. And while I'm thinking of it, we're also going to replace all the floors in the building itself with calcite, and we are also going to set up some new archways to kind of make the interior a bit more interesting to walk through and give the building a little bit more separation. Now, I know I'm getting a little distracted and I'm all over the place here, but I just now was thinking about how we do need a little way to get down into the courtyard. So I'm going to quickly whip up a little staircase section outside the house here. And there we go. I think this looks a lot better. But now at this point in the build, I decided to fire up a couple of live streams and start working on some of the interiors with you guys, which I guess this is the perfect time for me to mention. If you don't have your channel notifications on, you guys are missing out because I do build a lot of these things live on my channel. Now, for the rest of this process, I want you guys to keep in mind that I actually elected to not record a lot of the item gathering sections of the rest of this video. And that's mainly because there are literally hundreds of like one-off items that we only need one or two of. And if I were to record that and put it in this video, not only would the video length be extended by 20 to 30 minutes, but it would also just be kind of boring. Just trust me when I say it wasn't a very fun process. But anyways, we began by digging out a hole for the basement, and I decided I wanted to turn this into a wine cellar. You know, it makes the most sense considering that this is a vineyard. There would most likely be a giant storage room for wine down below. But here we go, guys. Again, we did most of this during the live streams, but our wine cellar is finished, and I am very happy with how this turned out. We did a lot of detailing. We got everything from brewing stands with some bottles on them to a bunch of barrels with wine being poured out. And we even came up with this kind of like wine bottle design. I'm not super happy with the way it turned out, but I think it gets the idea across. I also decorated this side wall here and added a bunch of extra layers for storage, and we detailed the staircase a lot better as well. So yeah, I'm really happy with how that turned out. And the next thing I want to do is some more courtyard work. I want to kind of set up a little weaponsmith outside here. I feel like it would make sense if this castle had some kind of armor smith or just toolsmith working outside. So I'm just going to come in here and try to build up a pretty big furnace, and then we'll place some decoration blocks outside as well. And there we go. I actually think that looks really good. Now, off to the left of that, we do kind of have this big empty space, and I don't really have any ideas as to what could go here. So we're actually just going to build up a really big cart to make it look like all those ores have been transported down from the mountain and are kind of just sitting off to the side here, getting prepped for their usage in the weapons. And there we go, that's good. And this wandering trader here, actually, you know what? I may take these firefly bushes. This is the first time I'm going to trade with a wandering trader in this world, I think. What do you know? This guy is actually useful. Still, rules are rules. And now that that's done, we'll take some of these firefly bushes and dot them around the area so we get some more ambiance at night. Now, I do want to come back into the courtyard here and build another one of those weirwood trees that we have over in the entertainment district. Well, I don't actually want to call them weirwood trees, but they are based on the weirwood trees in Game of Thrones. However, even though they're visually the same, I do want mine to have a little bit of different lore behind them. Now, I'm actually going to come over to the entertainment district here, and I'm going to try to design a banner that makes it look like the trees have eyes that are bleeding, kind of like we did on the first one and like the actual trees have in the show. But while I do this, I want to talk a little bit about the lore behind my trees. I think I actually want to call them whispering oaks. And the lore I was actually going to give to these trees is the idea that they're actually used as communication devices. It's said that if you pray to them for a certain amount of hours without any distractions or breaking your focus whatsoever, the trees will actually allow you to speak to them, and they'll carry your words on the wind to another whispering oak anywhere else in the world you want the message to go. And so that's kind of how the royalty of all the different kingdoms in this world communicate with each other. And it is also said that the trees will know whether or not you're trying to be deceptive to another person. So when it comes to times of war, there's actually no way for you to lie to your enemies about what you're up to or your troop movements or anything like that, because the trees will know about it. And even if you get the message across, it's said that if you do lie, they'll place a curse on you. But there we go. I think the little face on this tree turned out absolutely awesome. I love it. And I also like the idea of people coming to like hang their prayers on this tree. So we're going to place down a bunch of hanging signs and just write a bunch of different random messages on them to kind of get that idea across. And there we go. I'm super happy with how this turned out. Now moving over to something a little less lore intensive, we are going to build up kind of a little training area right across from the stables. I figured this would be a good place for maybe the king and his children to practice their swordplay and whatnot. And then we're also just going to go throughout the courtyard here, add in a couple piles of barrels and just decorate it with a bit more foliage. And now for something you guys have been waiting months for. You see, I've had this problem in my world where all of my pets have been locked away in the basement of my starter base, and honestly, they really deserve better. So my secret plan for this episode was actually to build this entire house for them. Yes, in lore, it's for the king, but I really just actually needed an excuse to build a home for all of my animals because they really deserve it after having been neglected for basically over a year now. So we're gonna go ahead and pick them up and just walk them back over to the main castle to give them their new homes. And I'm also going to spend a little bit more time preparing the stables here with a little bit more details because we are also going to bring our horse up here. Now, before we actually move the animals into the house, it's important that it's all decorated and ready for them. So I'm going to start by building up this kind of little spiral staircase in the stairwell section of the house. And right at the top here, we are off of the main dining area. So I figured it would make the most sense if we had a little tiny kitchen area that's just used to store the food that's going to be used for the main course of the current meal that's being served. We're going to build a bigger kitchen downstairs later. Again, I kind of just want something where the food that's already been cooked from the kitchen gets brought up and gets prepared on plates and made to look real fancy in this little side room. And there we go. I am very happy with how this turned out. I even included some mini blocks in here as well, which is pretty cool. And of course, moving forward, I figured it would make the most sense to just get started on the actual dining room itself, since that's literally right next to this tiny kitchen. So I'm going to come in with some trapdoors here to just build a little table. And then I'm going to set up some pretty fancy chairs using dark oak stairs, dark oak trapdoors, and some red banners. We're also going to set some red candles on the table and some red carpets as well. And what would a dining room be without a chandelier? So we're going to make a little one of those at the top here, right above the table. Then I'm also going to come in and decorate the place with some anvils and some plants. And I am also going to hang some flower pots as well, just to add that little bit extra bit of foliage. And there we go. With that, the dining room is done, and I think it looks perfect. But even with all those details in, my favorite part of this is still the fact that we can see the main castle from this area. And if we look to our right as well, we also get this awesome view of the mountains. But after that was done, I spent the next couple of hours quickly speed running through the rest of the house. I quickly built an office space for some meetings. I built up a really awesome common room for the king that leads directly up to his bedroom. And I also built up a private library / study area. I also made sure to add a downstairs bathroom for all of the castle workers as well. This one being a little bit bigger than the top one since more people use it. And then I went ahead and finished up making the king's bedroom that I mentioned just a few seconds ago. And honestly, the view from up here is also really cool. After that, it was time to whip up a little dining area downstairs also for the castle workers so they have a place to eat. And then I also took a few minutes on stream to decorate the interior of the back wall, that really long empty section. And I figured this would make a lot of sense if this was used for extra storage and things, so I threw down a bunch of shelves and some pots everywhere and some extra tables and chairs. Then I came into one of the back rooms of the castle and I actually divided it into a couple of different sections. That way we could have a few different rooms for some separate bedrooms, again for the castle workers. And then last but not least, it was time to put in the kitchen. This actually ended up being one of my least favorite parts of the build. I really could have done a lot better with this one, but I was really running out of time and I kind of had to rush through this process. So maybe we'll come back and visit this later and turn it into something much nicer. But with that, our castle is complete, and this might be the first time on my channel where not only have we completed an entire build in a video, but in that same video we completed the entire interior. So I am very happy with the way all these different rooms turned out, and I hope you guys are too. Again, if you want to download this build for yourself, consider checking out my Patreon, which will be linked in the top of the description. And if you have any questions about the mods or resource packs I use, you can also check that out down below by clicking the link to my Modrinth page. But once again, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for watching through this very long video, but with that said, I gotta get going because I've got an XP farm to build.